Like to call this meeting to order. And before we get started, if everyone would stand, I'd like to ask Father McGrath with the Holy Trinity Greek Orthodox Church to do the prayer, and Frank Ginzer to do the pledge.
Let's pray. Almighty God, we ask your blessing upon us, your servants, the members of this community, our elected officials, as together, through patience and understanding, we work together under your guidance to further the cause and the blessing of our community. Amen.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just going to do the hearing. The hearing's not part of the meeting.
Part of the meeting.
So just roll. Give me 1 second.
A little bit. That's it. Okay. Chris Moore.
Chair, entertain a motion to suspend the rules.
So moved.
All right, moved by Mr. Lawrence, seconded by Mr. Guines. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. If the clerk would read the revisions to the agenda.
To the policy agenda, we're removing item 4C, ordinance for a zoning map amendment for Reese Bergeron Road. To the consent agenda, we're adding 5K, resolution for change order 14, When Lane Construction. And we're adding 5L through 5U, involving emergency equipment for 10 patrol cars through Dana Safety.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the agenda as
I
amended?
would like to add one item to that. I'd like to put on the table to remove 4A. And it has not been back to the Planning Commission. Planning Commission, this is a brand-new resolution put on the table. So I think we should remand it back to the Planning Commission. Really, they've never seen it. And it had some significant changes. They expanded the PDHB to the whole bottom of the block. They added apartments. And so I think there's too much change in this particular ordinance to just put on the table as a first read. So I'm asking the council to consider just sending it back to, or send it to the Planning Commission, not back to them, and let them view this and go through the whole steps. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else have any comments? All right. So the clerk has read into the agenda the changes. Mr. Lawrence has added his recommendation to remove 3A. 4A?
4A.
Sorry, 4A. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Hold on, I'm sorry. I
Uh,
didn't hit
We
my
need
button.
he made a motion. I guess someone needs to second it.
Well, I don't know if it's a motion, it's just
Not a
reading
motion.
substitutions and removals.
Yes.
This is what we suspended the agenda to amend the agenda, and so he's just offering an amendment to the agenda. But I don't know that, how do we vote on this and only vote for or against certain items to amend to amend the agenda with? I will support the three that the clerk read, but I don't support Mr. Lawrence's. So a vote in the affirmative would then remove what Mr. Lawrence voted for, and a vote against it would remove all of
Mr.
the.
Deming, you are correct. So that anybody could read anything into the agenda, add or subtract anything from the agenda as we set the agenda.
Right.
Yep.
So the clerk has read the additions. Mr. Lawrence has also read what he wants to remove. and we're in the discussion phase.
Yeah.
If we move to vote on it, you can vote for all or part of what the clerk and Mr. Lawrence has offered.
Mr. President?
Yes,
He-
yes, Mr. Guines.
He asked for an additional amendment to the agenda, and in order for anything to get on the agenda, it has to be moved in second, and he just moved it. And at this point, I think we're in the phase of waiting for a second, whether it would be added or not added.
Mr. Guines, with all due respect, we've suspended the rules, so there is no rules to amend,
And we set,
and that's why we're adding or subtracting. So there is no amendment offered at this time because we've suspended the rules.
right, and we
Okay.
set an agenda. That's what we
Yep.
do every meet we have.
So
And
if I need to go down individually, and I think the proper would be to ask everyone, would they like to vote for the clerks in its entirety and Mr. Lawrence's proposal? Or would they like to just vote for one or the other? So I can ask that, and then we can move forward to approve the agenda as amended.
Can I
Yep.
make one simple way to resolve this is, Mr. Lawrence, would you withdraw your request and address it as we get to 4A? It'd be a perfect time to address that and resolve all of this confusion if we just addressed 4A as we approached it.
Well, I would just figured if it was off the table, it was off the table. I just wanted to go back to the planning, actually go to the planning commission. I don't
we
think it
can
was
send it-
yeah, I don't think it was handled properly, sent to us the way it is. With the department, too many changes.
What I'm saying, when it comes up, you can make that motion again, and I'd be happy to hear it out and address it at that point. I think that would be easier for all of us procedurally.
We'll do that. I'll withdraw the motion.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lawrence, for making it less confusing. So the clerk has read into the agenda the additions. All in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries. Mayor's report.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President, and welcome everyone to our June meeting, the first June meeting. I have a brief report. Please ask the council to spread the expenses of the Biloxi travel credit card to the minutes. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mayor. There being no department reports, we'll move on to the council report. What's that? Okay. Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, we got a procedural thing we got to take care of.
I forgot one thing anyhow, so we'll come back to it.
So the motion, do I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Mr. Barrett, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Lawrence, any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Approve the agenda as amended. We'll recognize the mayor.
One thing I did forget, Chris Moore, Chief Master Sergeant Chris Moore passed away yesterday. He was, I served with him on the Coliseum Commission, and nobody did the national anthem any better than him, and I would like to recognize the loss of Chris, and to his family, our condolences. So he'll be missed, and we just thankful that we had him for all those years. He was a great friend of Biloxi.
Thank you, Mayor. Council reports, Mr. Lawrence.
Yep, a couple things here. I'd like to welcome all the homeowners, the neighborhoods, the taxpayers of the city of Biloxi. Glad y'all come to meet and voice y'all opinion. That's a good thing. That's what we're up here to listen to you, listen to the facts. That's why we're having this public hearing coming up. So we have to actually deal with the facts and abide by the rules and regulations that we have in the city of Biloxi. So glad y'all here, and I hope y'all treated fairly and everybody listens to you, because we have to show respect to y'all. That's our job. We're not here other than to work with y'all and get the best thing done. The other thing I'd like, since these are all the letters that was given to me that I'd like to turn in to the clerk for this, all this, the public hearing, for the people who've been worrying about what's happening in their neighborhood, how it affects them, how they're gonna live. And I just wanna make sure that we turn all these in to the clerk. There's quite a few of them. Appreciate y'all's time and effort, and y'all standing up what you believe is right for yourself, right for your families, right for your homes, right for the neighborhood. And as taxpayers, we definitely need to listen to y'all, because y'all are the citizens that we represent, and y'all put us in office. So thank y'all for being here again. That's it.
Mr. Guines?
Yeah, just want to touch bases on two things. The mayor mentioned one, with Mr. Chris Moore, a viable part of the community award too. The mayor eloquently talked about the Biloxi Baritone, and he was supposed to be there for the gate opening, but he took ill and wasn't able to make it. So we're going to truly miss Mr. Chris Moore, better known to me as Chief. And, you know, one of the things that he gave me once I became councilman, and I cherish just my Air Force portfolio. So I hope we can close this meeting in the name of, in honor of Chief Master Sergeant Chris Moore. Thank you.
The people forgot one thing he sang. Every time we had something, who sang? He
Chris
did.
Moore, the Biloxi
Right.
Baritone.
He was the stable at everything we did. He was always there singing and had a great voice. It was awesome.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guines. Ms. Newman? Mr. Deming?
Just a couple of things. Mike, I spoke with Connie Rocco again, and I don't know that we're ever going to get the participation to get the concrete done in the bluffs. What is our alternative?
Our alternate plan would be to do it ourselves, using a contractor probably.
Can we get a,
We're in a funny spot right now. We have a contract for paving with two primary contractors, primary and a secondary. And because of the price of fuel and the price of asphalt, neither one of them is responding to our request for paving. We've issued POs and they're not ready to do the work. So that's a concrete road. We're gonna have to build it back as a concrete road. It's like others in that part of the town, they're cracking up and getting worse and worse year after year. Robert, I don't know, well, I really just think we're gonna have to put a capital project together, put some money against it, and do the work by a contractor. I think we marked all the bad slabs a while back. It was something like 8,000 square feet of paving that we need to do just for the bad spots.
right? So
I'll-
if we can establish that capital project, keep me updated on that, see if we can get some cost estimates for it, so we can try to get that done. They've been waiting quite a long time. As you said, we went out there and marked it up, and
Right.
and residents are seeing those arrows and those lines all of the road, and all they see is an action. So
Yeah.
I think it would be an opportunity to,
Well, in
So
your
we-
ward, Ravenwood and Laurenwood is the two of the 5 jobs that are on the hit list for the paving contractor when they decide to come back to work.
well, I can understand. It's difficult getting a lot of things done, especially with the exacerbated price with construction materials. But that brings me to another spot. And I think, Kenny, are you meeting with me in Lauren Falls tomorrow night?
I'm gonna do my best.
Okay, so I'm meeting with the homeowners, and possibly with Councilman Glavin to discuss the pipe issue that's over there that I think you guys have been discussing for a while before I took over that area as Ward 4. Do we have any updates on that I can share with them? Also, I sent an email last week or maybe the week before regarding some seepage at one of the corners. I don't know if anybody's reported back to you on that, or if I can give them an update, or if anyone from the engineering department is going to show up or has shown up out there.
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. We've got those projects on the list. The repair replace contract is in, new contractor is in place. We're ready to roll. We're just about out of money for the year.
Are we talking about the pipe issue?
Talk about the pipe issue.
Okay.
And the other one that you wrote me about earlier this week was seepage.
Right.
And I had engineering inspectors out there this week. I haven't gotten their report yet, but I believe that is just groundwater that's
Okay.
coming up.
And that may be what it is, and if so, that's fine, but I need to report back to them. If you'll verify that for me and just send me a heads up in the email or something so I can share it with the homeowners.
Right, we did pass a little bond issue, so we have some funds to address, the specific projects. So I think moving forward with, the drainage and some of the matchups, and its infrastructure. So I think we're in decent shape to put a plan together for both of those. By next meeting, we'll have a set of things to do.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Mr. Barrett?
Just a couple things. I would like to thank Parks and Rec. We had our first movie night at Eagle Point Park 2 Friday nights ago. Had a great turnout. They did a great job. Thanks to them, the police department sent some units out to.
Top Gun 2, is that what y'all showed? Top Gun 2?
No, they didn't have that one. The police department sent some units out as well to help with traffic and parking and stuff. So we had a great turnout and look forward to more of that. Secondly, Mike, I do have a pretty significant drainage issue in Eagle Point that I'll send you the information on it. It's something that we've looked at before and tried to correct, and it just hasn't done the job. So I'll send you the information on that tomorrow. See if we can get on that as soon as possible.
The roof is the last item on the pavilion. That should be done this week.
Yeah, it looks really good. It looks better than the last time. So that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. As far as my report, I got a couple of things. The Beto Do and the Blessing of the Fleet was a huge success. Of course, Memorial Day weekend was wonderful with all the recognition of our military servicemen. But the Blessing of the Fleet at the Civic Center was just fantastic. Mayor was there, gave a couple proclamations. We got Sonny Boyd Powell was our shrimp king, and Sonia Ross was our shrimp queen. And I tell you what, it's very moving to see the projects that those girls, there's 10 contestants that they put together. The committee did an awesome job. And to see the dance with the significant male figure in those contestants' lives was very moving, and it was a good thing to carry on our traditions. So thank you, Mayor, for making that night a very memorable one. Also, just talk about Councilman Deming's new ward. We got to make him look good over there. So that I know that pipe, that the smaller pipe needs to be replaced. We talked about it a long time. I think those folks have been very patient, and so however we need to move the needle on that, it really is time. I think we've been delaying it and giving them the answers that they patiently accepted, but it's time to figure that out, Mike. We got to figure that out. It's not even in my ward anymore, but I want to make him look good.
And I'll take all the credit.
I know, that's mine. Hingham Place, Pops Ferry, do we have any updates, Chief, on the traffic committee or anything on that? Before you answer that, I just want to commend Pops Ferry Landing. They've worked with Biloxi PD on getting a neighborhood watch program. They've taken it very seriously. They've gotten with the power company to put some lights out up in the neighborhood, but they're being very vigilant, and it's the right way of community to react to something like this. But I am getting calls on where are we with the traffic committee.
The traffic committee has met some issues that we're trying to get a legal opinion on now. Hopefully by next week we can set up another meeting along with some of the community representatives from both neighborhoods. And we have some ideas that we think they may like.
Okay. I'll report back to him. Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
And then the last thing, this is kind of a loose end. It's just bubbled up, pardon the pun, but it's kind of an old issue off of Cedar Lake. I think it's Road 537 or 536. I know we looked at it. They don't have water and sewer, and I don't think they're asking for that necessarily. They would love to have water and sewer. Ran to the homeowners. There's 5 or 6 houses back there, but they do need some relief on that road. If we could even provide some gravel to maintain that road so it doesn't get washed out. They are asking for consideration of that. If we can't do any permanent paving or running water and sewer out to their properties, they are asking for some relief on that. Is that something, Mike, we can at least look at? If it's just some simple gravel that we,
Yeah, we'll have to look at it. That's a private road. I know they've got a number on it, but it's not a city street.
okay,
But, you know, a few loads of rock is something that's not hard to do.
all right, perhaps,
So something the county might help us out with.
or perhaps they're at a point where they would let us take over the road and provide some gravel on the street for them to at least have it drivable and not washed out. That would be a big help. And that concludes my report.
What, 6 houses out there?
Okay, well, we're going to move on to the public agenda. We have a public hearing scheduled today, and before the clerk reads what it's all about, I just want to set some parameters, how it's going to go. Before we open the meeting, I'm going to ask Jerry Creel to at least give some opening remarks on just laying the groundwork on the history on how this developed to this point. Once we conclude his brief, we're going to move to the project side. Whoever is speaking for the project will have 10 minutes to do their presentation, speak about the project. So if it's 2 of you, or 3 of you, you got to figure out how to divvy up that 10 minutes, but you have 10 minutes. Once that concludes, we'll move on to the opposing side. You will have a total of 15 minutes. So if it's 15 people, you got 1 minute. If it's 3 people, you got 5 minutes, or however you want to divvy it up. But we have 15 minutes allotted. Once that concludes, we have 5 minutes from a rebuttal from the project side. The meeting will come to an end with a couple of minutes from any council members if they would like to speak about the topic or ask any additional questions, and then we will close the public hearing. Public hearings by ordinance normally are plus or minus 30 minutes per the ordinance. So that's how it will go. So if the clerk would read the topic, please.
Public hearing with respect to a request for a planned development hospitality business overlay district and master plan originally upon 3 parcels of land at 1252, 1254 Beach Boulevard, and 1257 Father Ryan Avenue.
Thank you. Mr. Crowe, if you'd give your pre-brief, I'd appreciate it.
The PDHB that's before you today is a revised version of what had previously been approved by the Planning Commission by a vote of 10 to 2, the AHRC by a vote of 6 to 2, and the Biloxi Tree Committee. The developer.
Can't hear you, Jerry.
Sorry?
So they can't hear you in the back.
Okay.
By the way, if everyone, including the council, would speak into the mic, I think these mics are acting up a little bit today. Let's try to do that. Go ahead, Director.
The developer of this project, after hearing the concerns of the neighbors and certain city council members, has revised his plan to remove the points of conflict and to decrease the intensity of the development. Because the intensity is being decreased, a return visit to the Planning Commission is not required. However, Phase 2, which is where the hotel has been removed, will be required to go through DRC, AHRC, the Planning Commission, and the City Council once it's designed. In addition to the proposed Aqua Suites on Highway 90, the original plan had a 6-story hotel in the center of the property with parking and an emergency egress onto Father Ryan Avenue. The developer and the designers have taken great care to design the project around the existing trees on the property and have bent over backwards to design a plan that is sensitive to the adjacent neighborhood. Under our land development ordinance, a PDHB is an overlay district or a map amendment, but it is not a zoning change. PDs are designed to accommodate mixed-use developments where the property may have design challenges such as existing trees, drainage, and proximity to neighbors. In the past few years, there have been a number of changes to the character of the immediate area, including there are no longer any single-family houses on Highway 90 within this block. The former Saxony Apartments, the City Council voted to convert the former Saxony Apartments into condominiums, which is considered under the building code as a commercial use. The White House Hotel, which remained vacant for years, has been totally restored and is planning a major expansion on the west side of White Avenue, and the City Council has already voted to change their property that they own on the west side to CB zoning. The flood maps with more stringent elevation requirements has been adopted. Also, this property is located on the busiest corridor in the city of Biloxi and is located 1/2 block from the main entrance to Keesler Air Force Base. After hearing the concerns of the neighbors and the city council members, the developer is now proposing a plan that removes the single-family lot on Father Ryan from the project. It will remain single-family and will either be sold to an adjacent property owner or will be donated to the city. There will be no parking or entrance onto Father Ryan Avenue. The fire department has determined that the project can be approved with one ingress-egress on Highway 90. Also, the proposed Residence Inn by Marriott is no longer a part of the development. Instead, the PD will be divided into 2 phases, with Phase 1 to include the Aqua Suites with only minor changes to the site. No trees will be removed, and there will be adequate parking in Phase 1. Phase 2 will be designed and built out as multifamily to comply with RM20 standards of the Land Development Ordinance, and will be required to go through the DRC, the AHRC, the Planning Commission, and return to the City Council for approval. Based on the size of the property in Phase 2, they can accommodate up to 30 units. Phase 2 will provide a textbook example of what we call transitional zoning between the high use, the Aqua Suites, and the single-family residential district, which is what is called for under the PD design standards. Because a PD is an overlay district, is a map amendment, if this project is approved, the PD master plan and terms are a recorded document, and they become a part of our official zoning map, and are binding on the land as recorded in the Land Development Ordinance of Section 23-2-4C6 of the Land Development Ordinance. Arbitrary changes concerning the use by the current or by a future owner cannot be made. If the project does not begin, the Phase 2 does not begin within 2 years, the Land Development Ordinance charges me with having the overlay removed, and the zoning would revert back to the underlying designation. These are the sections of the Land Development Ordinance where the PD is declared an overlay district. And I want you to think about the other PDs that we have in the city. Gaming establishments are PDs. They're called PDGE. The developer will typically come in with the design for Phase 1. They own the land, so what they do is they describe the boundaries of the overlay district, but they haven't done the design for all the different phases that they're going to do. What they'll do is they'll come in, and if they have Phase 1 designed, then they'll go ahead and present that for approval. But when they come back with Phase 2 and Phase 3, they have to come back and go through the process. We go through this also a good bit with residential single-family subdivisions, where they will describe the subdivision boundaries as a whole, but they only have Phase 1 designed at that point. And then when they come back with Phase 2, then we run Phase 2 back through the Planning Commission and the City Council. So once the design is accomplished for Phase 2, that will come back and go through the whole process. I received a letter this afternoon from an attorney, addressing some of the things within this. I didn't have time because I got it so late today, but I have been able to go in and diffuse several of the arguments. The overlay comes first, and the master plan would come second. They have 2 years to actually get their master plan in for Phase 2. They've already submitted their master plan for Phase 1, so that's already in your packet. I've listed the changes in the area that have occurred within the character of the neighborhood. The lesser use for Phase 2 is already zoned RM30, which is what they are proposing for Phase 2, is RM30 uses to be designed within what the LDO requires. There was a statement that said the applicant's position that Phase 2 will comply with RM20 standards without anything further does not meet the master plan requirements. Well, I was not able to find a location where the developer has said that it would be required without anything further. They know that they have to go back through the process with Phase 2. Also,
Director, you need to wrap it up.
yes, I'm through. I'm actually through. This is typical of the way that we do all the PDs. If you'll remember how we've done the PDGEs for the gaming commissions and the PDs for the single-family subdivisions, you'll see that we're following the same pattern here. Because they have reduced the scope of what they're going to do, it does not have to go back to the planning commission at this time, but will have to go back when they present that.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director, for that opening brief. We'll now begin the hearing. If we'd have the project representatives, you have 10 minutes. You'll give them a little ping, 30 seconds before they're need to be concluded, and then we'll wrap up, or we'll move on to the next phase of the hearing.
All right, Mr. President, David Wheeler, representing the developer, Harrison County Lodging Development. As Mr. Creel said, we have reduced what we originally applied for based on feedback from the neighborhood and from the council. We've eliminated the hotel from the northern part of it. We're going to leave the zoning, the RM20, which is what's currently zoned now for the whole piece of property, the same. So that'll never change. It's part of the amended master plan, which we've submitted. The master plan and the map supplement specifically designates master plan in 4 spaces and the supplement in 6 places that Phase 2 will be RM20 and cannot be anything else. Once that's adopted by the council, that's set in stone. That's the law. It can't change unless you change it. The developer does not intend to change it. Based on the feedback from the neighborhood, we made these changes. The Aqua Suites, we're going to add 8 rooms to the Aqua Suite on the northern part of it, which adds 1 floor, doesn't change anything. The height on the front is still 4 stories, as it has been. We've got 66 total parking spaces for the Aqua Suites, 15 extra included in that 66. The site plan, as Mr. Creel said, we submitted the master plan and the site plan for Phase 1. So that's before you now. Once you approve that, Aqua Suites is the only thing that can go on Phase 1. Okay? The single-family lot is going to be sold to an adjoining landowner. I'll have his lawyer come up in just a minute to explain that. So that's out of the project. There was a lot of concern about an entrance, an emergency entrance, and things of that nature, so that's gone. By upgrading to a higher level of non-flammable and fire-resistant building materials, we're able to meet the fire department requirements of only having 1 entrance and exit on Highway 90. The Aqua Suites will have a total of 48 rooms. No live oak trees are going to be removed in connection with Phase 1. As Mr. Creel said, anything that goes in the RM20 Phase 2 zone will have to go through the same process, through the DRC, the Planning Commission, Council, the Historic Commission. All of that has to go through, and if we don't do that within 2 years, the zoning reverts to RM20. Well, that's what we're going to make it, RM20, so there really wouldn't be any change. The Phase 2 multi-family units would go through the same process as any new multifamily unit would go through. This particular developer, Chico Patel and his family, they own Wealth Hospitality. It's a Mississippi company. They've built high-quality hotels in different states, but a lot in Mississippi. They joined with Mr. Bach to build the Hyatt Place that everyone seems to be pleased with. One thing I would mention is the overlay district that we're proposing only covers the property that this developer owns in the block bordered by White Avenue on the east and St. Jude's on the west. And you as a council have already determined that there's been a change in the character of the neighborhood of that block when you rezone the White House property, it's on the west side of White Avenue, to commercial. So even though we don't have to prove as part of an overlay plan development that there's been a change in the character of the neighborhood, I believe we have, because we've shown the change in the character, the destruction from Hurricane Katrina, the lack of any reconstruction of single residential homes. There's only one piece of property that's single residential now, and that was Ms. Lekkich's property that the White House folks have purchased, and they have an application for a PD for that property to include the White House Hotel, which has already been developed, and you changed the zoning for that to allow that on the east side. So there's definitely been a change in the character of the neighborhood in this property. We're not applying for something that covers the whole historic district. And I'd like to get Mr. Schwartz up here so he can tell you a little bit about what we're going to do with the residential property.
Good evening. Robert Schwartz, here on behalf of Victor Marver Jr. I would like to say that we were initially opposed to the project. Mr. Marver is one of the adjacent landowners that lives on Father Ryan, who was going to be dramatically affected by both the large hotel that was proposed for the middle of the property and the proposed entrance. And I'm going to commend the developer because they listened to the reasonable objections that we had, and we were able to resolve them. They've removed the large hotel that was objectionable. They've agreed to sell the lot on Father Ryan to Mr. Marver, and it will remain residential. Of course, there will be no drive there. That's just, he's going to buy it so that no one else utilizes it for any other purpose. In addition, the developer has agreed to give a private restrictive covenant so that regardless of what they want to do in the future, they can't come back and change the RM20. So there will be a private restrictive covenant that grants my client the ability to enforce rights against them if they attempted to do so, which tells me that they have no intent of changing it because they'd have to do it before the council and then they'd have to find a way around our covenant, which won't happen. So after they made those reasonable concessions, we have no further objection with the development. We think that the Aqua Suites and its location is compatible with the neighborhood. We don't believe that it's going to obviously put no traffic on Father Ryan because there's going to be only a singular entrance through both Phase 1 and Phase 2 through Highway 90. So we're in favor of the project.
You have 4 minutes. 4 minutes left.
And that's ours in a summary.
We've got a PowerPoint that we'd like to run through real quick. I want to save at least 3 minutes or 2 minutes for rebuttal. So cut him off after 2.
Good afternoon. My name is Neil Poland with Dale Partners Architects right up the street. I'll try to be brief. If you want to start cycling through, this is the Aqua Suites hotel that I think many of the folks in the audience have seen in many of the previous hearings that we've had. We're looking to build up to 48 units. This would be a $15 million investment in the city of Biloxi. As discussed before, there's not a single living or dead, protected dead tree that's being removed in Phase 1. As David and Robert have discussed, you can keep going. The Phase 2, which as you can see is kind of in the middle of the site where the Residence Inn was being proposed, has now been removed completely. And that would be designed and built at a later date to comply with the existing RM20 multifamily standards. Keep cycling, please. Keep going. This is just a graphic that I hope is easy for everyone to read that just kind of indicates kind of how the site is being divided. And you can see the single-family lot that's on Father Ryan is no longer even being considered as part of this PD. And I think this graphic is also, I think, important to show because it shows the appropriateness of the Aqua Suites with the Cypress Cove development to the west, the White House Hotel to the east, and also the White House Hotel expansion directly to the east, where this hotel is planned to go. Keep going. This is a rendered site plan, again, just showing our sensitivity to the trees and how we lay the site. And if you'll just keep cycling through, there's a few renderings. This is a rendering of a buffer wall that we still plan to install on the rear line of the single-family lot.
Let him go. Mr. Glavin, the only thing else I would add at this time is we've provided a copy of this to each of you. Asked the clerk to make a copy of it for the record. Also make a copy to the court reporter so she could attach it to her transcript.
Thank you.
I think I'm out of time.
You're out of time. Right, the opposing side will have 15 minutes. I'm going to call it more or less, probably more than less, but just as a courtesy, because the brief went a little bit long on the front end. So who will be speaking in opposition? Okay, you have a total of 15 minutes, more or less, so let's go ahead and begin.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Thank you for the opportunity to come here this evening and speak. We sent copies of an objection electronically to the members of the council and the clerk. Does everybody have a copy of that? If not, I'll be happy to provide one.
What is it?
Yeah, I don't have that.
Email? Yeah, I think you provided it electronically, but we don't have.
I think we got one of those.
Oh, yeah.
My name is Matthew McDade, and I'm an attorney that represents several of the homeowners that live in and around or on and around the Father Ryan neighborhood. And I'll be honest, I was retained late last week, so I'm catching up to some of the history that's going on throughout the timeline of this development. My client's objections to this current proposed development are twofold. One of the objections is substantive, and it relates to whether or not what is happening with the PDHB overlay is in fact a rezoning or a change in the zoning of this property. The second is a procedural objection, and it really relates to this hearing going forward today. I'm going to start first with the procedural side of that. They object to the fact that this hearing is even being conducted. Under the city's land development ordinance, you've got to have a 15-day notice of a public hearing on an overlay proposal of a PD. We are here today on June 7th. I think the latest version of the proposed development was circulated on May 31st. By the text of that plan, it has in fact been several substantive changes to the proposed development just 8 days ago. The land development ordinance is very clear. If you make substantive changes to a PD within the 15-day notice period, it has to go back. It can't go forward. And so our first objection this evening is to this public hearing even going forward on the current plan as it's written and as it was provided on May 31st of 2022. Turning to the bigger issue, and that's the substantive issue. The reality is this is a change to the zoning of this piece of property. I understand Mr. Creel's position, understand previously Mr. Blessey's position in front of the Planning Commission that simply doing an overlay district is not rezoning property. That, respectfully, that is not what Mississippi law provides. There are numerous Mississippi cases. I've provided a copy in the objection that we provided to you. I won't bore everyone this evening by reading a bunch of Mississippi Supreme Court precedent, but the takeaway from those cases is when a city changes the use of a single property to allow a use that was not allowed under the prior zoning map, the courts have held that that is a rezoning. That is a change in zoning. When you change zones, when you rezone property, there's a very strict standard under Mississippi law that has to be applied. I'm sure this council is fully aware of that standard. And that standard is under a clear and convincing evidence standard. Again, not to bore you with a bunch of legalese, but clear and convincing standard is one of the higher standards, burden of proof that you have to meet in any civil legal setting. What does the developer then have to show? Number one, that there has in fact been a change in the character of the neighborhood. So far, all we've heard about the change in the character of the neighborhood relates to vacant lots left after Hurricane Katrina. One of the maps you'll see in our objection provides you an overlay of how many lots are actually left vacant in that beachfront historic district. It's nearly identical to what the levels were pre-Katrina. So the argument that as we sit here in 2022, that the character of the neighborhood has changed because of Hurricane Katrina is simply not accurate. That's not accurate. It certainly doesn't meet the clear and convincing standard. We heard tonight, I think for the first time, from Mr. Creel that the change in the character of the neighborhood relates to the fact that there's no longer any single-family homes on Highway 90. That seems to ignore what the current zoning is for the homes on Highway 90. That's RM 20. That allows for multifamily homes. So simply saying that there's not any single-family homes doesn't in fact indicate that there's been a substantial change in the character of the neighborhood. And in fact, there was a reference made to a multifamily structure that's on Highway 90. Well, that in fact falls under the RM 20 zoning regulations, so that can't be used as clear and convincing evidence of a substantial change in the character of the neighborhood. Even if somehow they did overcome that first hurdle of showing the substantial change in the character of the neighborhood, they've got to meet the second part of that requirement, and that is to show that there's a public need. And in this case, it's a public need for 40 hotel rooms. As I understand, that's what the current draft of the Aqua Suites Hotel provides for 40 hotel rooms. In order to do that, all they've provided to date is a comparison of how many hotel rooms were in Biloxi pre-Katrina and how many hotel rooms are in Biloxi today. There's no reference to the fact that the city of Biloxi has registered or licensed several vacation rentals or VRBO or short-term rental properties. There's no reference to the fact that neighboring municipalities actually have more hotel space today than they did pre-Katrina. And the kicker is, there's no evidence that there is a need for more hotel rooms. What would that look like? It would indicate some kind of occupancy level comparison. What are the occupancy of current hotels? Where's that need for additional hotel space? Again, that may be there, but there's no clear and convincing evidence as we sit before the city council today to show that, to justify this rezoning of property to allow this commercial use and property that is undisputed that it only allows for residential use. My clients are reasonable people. My clients are certainly open and willing to work with the developer to find solutions. But as we sit here today, what is before you today cannot be passed for the reasons that we've outlined. Number one, the procedural issue. It is not properly here on a public meeting today because of the changes that have been made to the application within the 15-day notice period. And the second and the broader issue and the bigger issue is that what is happening is there is a rezoning of this property for one particular project. And it seems to us that Mississippi law is clear that that constitutes a rezoning. Regardless of what you call it, the courts are going to look at it as a rezoning. And with that, I would open up the floor to any questions that the council members may have.
I do want to give anyone else that wants to speak in opposition before we open the floor up. Is there anybody else that wants to say anything, or will y'all allow questions and answers from the council to general counsel here? Okay. Anyone would like to ask any questions?
I do.
All right, Mr. Lawrence.
A couple things. What you just said, you watched this meeting, all of a sudden we got 56 rooms at Aqua Inn. Nobody ever said that before. That's not in this original document. And here it lists as 40, not 56. That's a pretty good change of anything when you're taking from 40 to 56. And I'm like with you. They didn't call it what they want. You have to have a zone change to allow a hotel on that property. It is RM20, hotels are not allowed. So you have to change the zone. Now, how they get away with that, I really don't know. None of this has actually been back to the planning commission or even addressed the planning commission. You said about the 15-day rule, pretty obvious. That has not been 15 days. And everything they've changed, and just like the deal Mr. Marvin them did, that's fine and dandy. That's not in there either. What is the deal? They bought the property. They keep bringing up the White House. The White House bought the property. It has nothing to do with this deal. The White House has nothing to do with what we're dealing with right now. So they keep talking about things that has nothing to do with this project. And I'm asking you as a lawyer, how is it possible that this is even on the table when it was never went through the proper procedure? That's my question, and I told that from the beginning. There's too many things wrong and too many things changing in this document, and now we changing them again. And I still don't have, my one question, the planning commission passed something a few weeks ago, and we called a public hearing for that. So what happened to that plan that we were dealing with? Is it on the table, completely gone? And if it is, then we have to start over. So my question to you, what happened to that plan that the planning commission actually passed, that we dealt with as a public hearing?
Councilman Lawrence, we would contend that the changes that have been made in the last 15 days are the point of our objection. As to what changes have been made since the Planning Commission, I'd certainly defer to the ordinance. As I sit here today, I can't tell you that I've reviewed all those and could give you an answer on that. But I do know that the changes that have been made in the last 15 days do not allow this public hearing to go forward without the project being referred back to the Director of Community Development. And to your point that you mentioned about the increase in the number of rooms, that changes the density. And that changes things like parking. And those are more than just small modifications. And those things, we would contend, would need to go back before the Planning Commission so that a full recommendation on the actual project could be made to this body.
All right, Mr. Lawrence, let me come back to you. Anyone else have any questions for the speaker?
Are we going to come back to questions?
We're running out of time, so I'm trying to give everybody an opportunity.
I do have some questions, but I'm not ready.
All right, Mr. Barrett, you have anything? I don't have anything. Ms. Newman, you can continue until Mr. Deming is ready. But we're going to run out of time. I'm just warning you.
I want to go back to something else that they changed to me major in this thing, is taking the PD and taking in the whole block. Can they do that? They don't own that property. Yeah. They said how you read this in here, but that's what it says, all lots on this block. So they didn't also expanded the PD from the 3 acres originally to the rest of the block. That's a big change. I mean, there's too many big changes to pay attention to. You can't send this back to the planning commission to at least look at it. So,
Councilman, I think that's an excellent point. It's certainly not something we raise particularly in our objection, but to the extent it extends beyond property that they control, and I don't know whether or not that's the case, but if it does, I think it might be an overreach on the request. Certainly would need to review that to confirm completely. But to the extent that's the case, I don't know that that would be a proper application.
and then another question is they're taking the top part, they're supposed to be changing it to PD, but yet we're going to control it as RM20 or RM30. That's residential multi-homes. If they do that, then they're out of the 3 acres. Because by this law, you have to have 3 acres under this PD to make these changes, the HB. So now you got another step that's changed. Now you're going to control it as RM20, which is good for the neighbors, and it's supposed to be proposed apartments. And that's the problem I have. Right? This is written here. We don't know anything. Don't know the deal they made. And it's way too many changes. They said we're going to accept this, and this is their own document. It's not ours. And this was put on the table, like you said, May the 31st. So that's what I'm saying. We got how many documents we had, and then the historical committee, after the planning commission, passed another one. So I don't know. We have 2, 3, 4. I don't know what you have on the table. Somebody needs to put all this together and send it back to the planning commission. And yes, Jerry Creel, that's your job to make sure it's done properly. And right now, it's not. Are you ready yet, Demings?
I mean, I can come back to it when it comes up on
Yeah, you got 1 minute.
the docket, but, Matt, thank you for coming today. Appreciate it. Well-spoken and a great delivery of your argument. Can you, I'm trying to read through the code right now, and I can't find this 15-day requirement that you're referring to in ordinance 2323, subsection D, subsection 3.
The actual 15-day requirement comes from table 2323, subsection F4. That's the actual 15-day notice.
E4?
F4.
Okay.
That's a table, and it gives how much notice is required for each particular public hearing on any PD.
There are some references throughout the code as I read to qualifiers like major and minor amendments and changes. Do you have a definition for that section of the code in whether it references major or minor changes and what constitutes a major or minor change?
I don't know. There's a list provided, and I believe it's in the first ordinance section you referenced, 2323, subsection D3. I believe that's where it talks about substantive changes being made within the 15-day period. I believe there's references to changes to major elements of the project. The change we've got here is they've removed a hotel and replaced it with multifamily housing. That's a pretty big change to be made within a 15-day period. And I know the argument here today is, oh, well, that's phase 2. We can deal with phase 2 later. But the entire overlay district is what's on the table today. And so what we're asked, what my clients are being asked to accept is we'll deal with phase 2 later. Let's go ahead and get this done today, with absolutely nothing indicating what that phase 2 is going to look like. For instance, where's the driveway going to be?
Well,
Are these residents going to come through a boutique hotel to go to their homes?
Gentlemen, we have 1 minute.
Let
We
me-
got 1 minute left in this section.
Let me
and
wrap
then we have
this
a
up.
rebuttal.
Matt, I can concede with some of what you're saying with regard to that last argument. However, they did mention replacing that hotel with residential, but I think they also said that was almost dictum in a sense that it's not part of the plans yet. They're just suggesting that that's what they will be bringing. It hasn't been proposed. So with regard to what's being presented today, it's just the removal of the hotel, not the replacement of residential houses. So again, I do concede the confusion and the understanding that it is a change to that plan, but I don't think that they've actually put on the table what that's going to be just yet.
Councilman, that'd be a point of confusion, because I think we heard Mr. Creel talking about they had to start work on phase 2 within a certain time period or they would lose the overlay district.
So they would have to present that within a certain period of time. They have not presented that yet.
But they do reference in their written submission.
All right.
Do reference.
Last word. That's it? Okay,
Mr.
thank
Creel,
you.
can Mr. Creel grab a
Respectfully,
moment?
thank you.
Thank you,
Creel,
gentlemen.
try to grab some.
Councilman.
Yes, sir, thank you.
All right, this phase is 5 minutes for a rebuttal.
Yes, sir. First, let me say, the rooms, the original master plan was for over 140 rooms when the Residence Inn was there. So we've reduced that to 48 rooms, not 52 or 56. It's 48 rooms, 8 additional rooms. And really what they're objecting to is they're objecting to the city's land development ordinance, because we have complied with the ordinance. We found a PDHB, which is provided for. The council adopted that allows overlay districts. You did an overlay district for Margaritaville. They didn't know what they were going to do with their second phase. They didn't have any site plans or anything. We have filed the master plan. We have filed our site plan for phase 1. That's what's before you. Part of the master plan restricts phase 2 to what is allowed by the city LDO or RM20. That's all that can go there. Nothing else can go there. As far as the procedural, the city has always allowed an applicant to scale down their application. That's not a major change. Our application is much lower. All we're doing is the Aqua Suites on the front in phase 1 and we're ready to start construction on that as soon as this is approved and we submit the plans to the city and pull the permit. What will be done on phase 2, we'll have to go through the process. We'll have to go through DRC, the Historic Review Committee, the Tree Committee if necessary, the Planning Commission, and the City Council, and y'all can approve or not approve it. If nothing happens within 2 years, the overlay district goes away, and what do you have? You have RM20, which is what is provided for in the master plan, RM20. So you're not really changing anything. And the Supreme Court has said cities have the ability to set their own zoning regulations, which is what the city of Biloxi has done when you adopted the land development ordinance. And you provided for planned development overlay districts. So we are complying with city law, and we're doing all the steps that we're required to do under the LDO to present this project to you, okay? And the Supreme Court has upheld that time and again. We are not rezoning, but I believe that we have shown the change in the character of the neighborhood and the public need. You have already accepted that when you rezoned the White House property on the west side of White Avenue, which is less than 100 feet away from this property. You found that there was a change in the character of the neighborhood within this block. And our planned development does not cover the whole block. It only covers the property owned by my client.
Mr. Wheeler, will you allow a question by Mr.
Sure.
Deming?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Wheeler, I appreciate your arguments. I know that we are allowed to make our own laws. We just have to make sure that we follow the procedures that we set for ourselves. One question that has bothered me and concerned me is the apprehension by everyone in that neighborhood for this PDHB district. Can this project be done without using that overlay? Is there a way to make this happen with only zoning the property that you're building this hotel on appropriately without adding a PDHB's overlay?
One of the problems with that, it may be able to be possible, but we'd have to go back through the whole process all over again. And the PD allows the developer to do what Mr. Marver has requested, and that is to have
1 minute.
A higher fence and to do landscaping that will allow trees to grow taller, that will block this development off from the residential neighborhood. That's not allowed within the RM20 as it stands right now.
So is there any mechanism within the RM20 to allow for the higher fence or the growing of the trees? The reason why I ask that is because if the property is zoned RM20 on that back area, and they plan to build something to conform with that RM zoning, then why do we need a PDHB over that? If it's RM20, leave it RM20, let them develop RM20 and develop the structure. There has to be a mechanism to allow for some variance for a taller fence in those areas.
And I'd have to defer to Mr. Creel for that.
We can address that when it comes up on the docket if you want to, Mr. Creel. I know that he's a stickler for time, and I'm not making him happy.
No, you're good.
Just the PD allows more flexibility to not do anything that's not allowed in the RM20, but
I agree.
All right.
the better use of the property.
I want to thank everyone. The time has expired for this proceeding. I want to thank both sides, for and against, to attend this meeting, providing some useful input. This hearing is now closed. We'll move on to public comments. Please stay. We have a total of 45 minutes. You have up to 3 minutes, each individual that would like to speak. You need to come up to the front, announce your name and your address, sign in your name and address as well. The timekeeper will ring the bell when you have 30 seconds left. So you'll wrap it up. You got 30 seconds left once the bell rings. So we'll begin on this side, my left, your right. Anyone would like to come up and speak? Mr. Genzer?
My name is Frank Genzer. I live at 145 St. Jude Street. I've lived at that address for the last 30 years. I'd like to say, well, it's taken 3.5 months for the developers to listen to the concerns of the neighborhood. And at least for my point, they have allowed the architects to come up with a master plan that meets those concerns. And with that, I am 100% in favor of the development that has been proposed to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on my left, please raise your hand, be recognized. On my left, Mr. Kavanaugh.
My name is Michael Kavanaugh. I live at 134 St. Jude. And it wouldn't be a meeting discussing the Aqua Suites if I didn't say a word or two on it. So a couple of things. Mr. Deming, thank you. The question you asked is the question that has been on everyone's mind since this proposal has been put for us. It just seems like it's overkill to have to do what they're doing in order to get a hotel on the front of the property and multifamily residential on the back. So thank you for asking that. As far as the character of the neighborhood, I do want to speak to that a little bit in that package you were given, this chunk of land between the Elks Club and Seashore Manor, these are all the properties in the historic district. Of the properties that are designated in green are either the same as before Katrina, rebuilt after Katrina, or a new build after Katrina. That's 78% of the property between the Elks Club and Seashore Manor. So I would say that the character of the neighborhood has remained pretty consistent since or after Katrina. And the Cypress Cove condominiums, which Mr. Quirrell mentioned was a commercial endeavor or a commercial application, it is in an RM20 zone. So I'm assuming that means it's residential. And that condominium complex was apartments before Katrina and has become condominiums, individually owned condominiums since Katrina. So there's 40 extra residential units that we did not have before Katrina in this neighborhood whose character really hasn't changed that much. So I think that's probably all I have to say here. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything. Well, one other thing too, the process going before the Historic Committee, the Planning Commission, et cetera, none of that, I don't believe, is documented in what you have before you to approve. I don't think it is specifically stated. I may be wrong, but I've read the document and it does not state that specifically. So, it's easy to say that, but we would like some guarantee that that's going to be done if that is the proposal, and the best way to do that is just to send this thing back to the Planning and Zoning and Historic Committee. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
I finished before you.
Anyone else on this side like to be recognized? Yes, ma'am. Mr. Collins, Ms. Collins.
My name is Debbie Collins, and I live at 124 St. Paul Street and have lived there for 45 years. Our house was the first house that was built in the subdivision in 1895, and the property originally went from the beach to the back bay, so there have been some changes, but not really that recently. The development company has agreed to two issues: the elimination of the Residence Inn and no access from Father Rhine. The proposal is divided into two parcels, and of course we're discussing parcel one or proposition one tonight, and they're going to decide on phase two later, possibly a year from now or whenever. Why not go the extra step to protect the future of our neighborhood and of Biloxi and make the presentation for both parcels? That way, you know what you're voting on, and we as a neighborhood know what we're agreeing to. There seems to be some question about the HPB and what is allowed, and I have an extensive list here of what is allowed. There's also a question about if you have another business related, does it have to be affiliated with the hotel or not? And so there's a problem with the interpretation, but as a few examples, there are 78 allowances for a planned development district, and some of the more worrisome ones are that a government maintenance, storage, or distribution facility is allowed. What is that? Is that like a barn for tractors? I don't know. A gas station is allowed. An RV park is allowed. If a nightclub is a retail manufacturing, what is that? Is that like, are we going to be making mattresses on the corner? I don't know. A restaurant with a drive-in through service, a Chick-fil-A, a Wendy's, a convenience store with or without gas station. And my favorite one, a massage therapy business. So, thank you.
First one who gets up here.
Hi. My name is Becky Green, and my husband Courtney and I have owned the home at 1332 Beach Boulevard for 33 years. As an owner of one of the few remaining historic homes, beachfront homes, I'm here to voice opposition to any change in zoning in our neighborhood from residential to PDHB. Our home was built in 1907 by L.N. Dantzler, and it survived Camille and Katrina. Like so many of our neighbors, we've worked tirelessly to restore and preserve the historic integrity of our home, which was badly damaged during Katrina, and feel that our neighborhood has in no way lost its historic character. In fact, its proximity to the beach and to the downtown area, as well as the restoration efforts of our property owners, continue to make it one of the most desirable neighborhoods in Biloxi. We are all invested in our properties and in this neighborhood, both financially and emotionally. After Katrina, I was invited to join the Reviving the Renaissance Steering Committee, formed to create a blueprint for the city's comprehensive plan for rebuilding Biloxi. This report was submitted to Mayor A.J. Holloway on July 20th, 2006. I was asked specifically to serve on the Historical Preservation Committee, whose purpose was, as I quote, restore or rebuild and protect our historical sites and neighborhoods for the people of Biloxi, past, present, and future. I'd like to highlight a few recommendations made by this committee. Number one, strictly avoid granting any commercial zoning along the beachfront in areas already zoned as residential. Number two, beachfront property zoned residential must remain residential. Commercial businesses must not be given variances in these areas. Number three, protect and preserve our centurion trees. Do not give variances to remove trees for development. The application for rezoning ignores all of these recommendations and in fact is exactly what the plan was trying to protect against. We and our neighbors have labored to be good stewards of our historic properties. We now ask the city of Biloxi to do likewise and be a good steward for its historic districts. These are not just houses to us, they are our heritage. They are Biloxi's heritage, and it's incumbent upon all of us to preserve that heritage by honoring the plan for Biloxi's future and not changing the zoning to PDHB. Once it's done, and we will lose control of what type of businesses ultimately can be built there. And if that happens, then yes, the character of our historic neighborhood will change forever. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else on my left? Anyone else on my left would like to come up and speak? Anyone on my right would like to come up and speak?
Oh, we don't have to sign in? Good. Hi, I'm Teresa Thompson. I live at 1502 Avalon, Yeah, 1506 Avalon. I've done used 1502 too many times. All right, sorry. I have some concerns about the PDHB. That is my biggest thing. When I look at everything that we have been through for the last 3.5 months, everything came down to the fact that we had to have a PDHB for them to do this project. They started out with 48 rooms, put in an area that was 3 acres with RM20 property. The most number of units you could put there would have been how many? 20 per acre. You got 3 acres, they can't put but 60 units. What did we start with? 148. Now, tell me, and so they had to put a PDHB there in order to make that happen. That scares me when we got that much control or change in our building ordinances that are there to protect the residents of that neighborhood from the very thing that it was about to cause. We had high buildings, we got a change in that character, and to be honest, Mr. Creel mentioned to us one day in a meeting that a residential area has to have a rezone because if you're rezoning it, you change the character of that neighborhood. So if it is residential, you got to come up with a reason of why it can't be residential anymore. So I have a little more problem with it. We are, with this current zoning, personally, there is no hotel, which you've already said, is allowed to be built on this property. It's all RM20, so it can't have a hotel on it. However, what has been placed before you is a request to turn residential property commercial without it going through the proper rezoning procedures. How are they attempting to accomplish this? The planned development hospitality business overlay is intended to be used in a large-scale hospitality business developments. Somehow these 3 acres is owned residential and surrounded by a residential neighborhood seem to meet the concept of a large-scale hospitality district. The scary part of the PDHB overlay is that it supersedes all zoning and ordinance requirements that are normally the thing that protects the neighbors. Once this overlay is used, there is no oversight. They don't do anything. They can do what they want inside that property. They may have to go back if they change the master plan, but other than that, they can do anything they want in it that fits in their list. So basically, the developer gets the authority to put whatever he wants, wherever he wants, whenever he wants, because the overlay changes all the business orders inside of that property. The result is a loss of power of the residents of the Father Ryan neighborhood. Right.
30 seconds.
Okay. Who no longer have a means to ensure that the property in question is not impeding on their right to live in a peaceful, family-friendly neighborhood, because avenues to voice concerns after this point which are usually addressed through approved building ordinances do not exist in the PDHB overlay. So the neighbors get no say-so. Once you approve this, it's done. And you're approving it on the whole 3 acres, and half of it is not developed. It makes no sense.
Thank you. Your time's up. Anyone else like to come up and speak? Last chance. Anyone else? Did I miss? Okay. Public comments is now closed. Or would you like to come up? I'm giving you a shot. Come on. I almost got you.
Okay, I'm Ellen Nikovich, 1269 Father Ryan Avenue. The lady back there wanted to mention that the gate at Keesler is closed. It's not the main gate anymore. I just want to start off with the burden of proof is for the developers to prove that our character of our neighborhood has changed, and it has not. We have 49 resident-owned homes and condos on the block, and the block is the neighborhood, Father Ryan, White Avenue, St. Jude, and our historic Beach Boulevard. Since Katrina, we have had new homes built, and many have invested in remodeling and investing in their homes. The vacant lots on Beach Boulevard have been bought, 2 of the lots have been bought by residents to stabilize our neighborhood. The Lechner family on Father Ryan has bought, and they're in the middle of the lot, have bought property on the beachfront on our block, and they are going to eventually build single-family units or a house. Also on the west side, the Brazier family have bought that extended lot on the Beach Boulevard for single families. So we have had changes, but it's more towards the residents. There is no public need for these changes because there are many commercial lots available on Highway 90. Since Katrina, there have been 28 new homes and rebuilt homes along Beach Boulevard. Elliott Homes is building 5 new homes at the front by the beach and 32 new homes behind them. Father Ryan is also a long-established, much-loved neighborhood. It's lined by trees. We have the tour train even comes to Father Ryan. We have a Volks walking trail. Our neighborhood is very quiet, established, and we really want to protect it. The character of our neighborhood has just not changed. It's actually flourished as a historic resident neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Come up and speak. You? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Gwen Fallow. I live on Morrison Avenue. Just wanted to make a point of clarification. A point was made that we are the main gate to Keesler, and we are no longer the main gate. That's only open for a couple of hours in the morning, and rather than, this point was made to make us sound very commercial on White Avenue, when it's had exactly the opposite effect. It has gotten so much quieter in our neighborhood since that gate has been closed, except for a few hours in the morning. So I just didn't want that misrepresentation to stand.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else want to have the opportunity to speak? You have 3 minutes if you'd like to come up to the front and speak. Okay, public comments is now closed. We'll move on to the policy agenda.
Ordinance to authorize a planned development hospitality business overlay district and master plan upon 2 parcels of land located at 1252 and 1254 Beach Boulevard.
I would move that. I'd like to remove it and remand it to the planning commission and get all these things straight that everybody's concerned about. The PD, the HB, the 16 new rooms added on to the hotel, taking in the whole block with the PD, HB all the way to the corner. And here you say, I don't know how they're doing that because they don't even own this property.
Motion is to,
They bought the property, they own the property, but yet they included in this and everything in empty land on that block. I mean, there's just too many things wrong and changed, and the deals they're making, we don't know what they are. That need to be listed in here. So that needs to be put back at the planning commission, sent to the planning commission and let them look at it and then bring it back to us.
all right,
And the true form was actually, should be written correctly, and anybody knows that. And they'd like to, all the questions, do you need the PD? HD? No, you don't. But you have to change the zone to put a hotel on that property. That's key, so.
thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Mr. Lawrence is making a motion to remand item 4A back to the planning commission for review. Is there a second?
Right.
Being no second, that motion fails. Is there a motion for first reading?
I'll second.
Moved by Mr. Deming, seconded by Mr. Guines. We'll move on to the next item.
Ordinance to amend the zoning map for 18 parcels of land from regional business to planned development infill district and master plan for preliminary subdivision replat for lots 9 through 26 of Cobb Business Park subdivision.
I'll move it.
Moved by Mr. Guines. Seconded by Ms. Newman. Mr. Guines.
Is that still the first reading with the B?
Oh, you are correct. First reading. Thank you. Item C, note that has been removed, so we'll move on to the resolutions. Item D.
Resolution to grant preliminary subdivision replat approval for Lot 2A of Cedar subdivision.
I have a motion. I'll move it. Do I have a second? Second by Ms. Newman. Joe, you want?
Yes, sir. Can we skip C? Skip C.
Item D.
On D.
No,
Okay.
item D.
Oh, okay.
This is the property just north of Nordaloo subdivision on Pops Ferry Road. They're proposing to build a hotel on this property, and because it's been subdivided before, it had to go through a re-subdivision to create this lot, so it's a good request.
Okay, Ms. Newman, you have anything to add? Anyone else? Any questions on this property? There being none, call for the question. All in favor? Those opposed? Motion carried unanimous. Next item.
Resolution to grant preliminary subdivision approval for 12-lot single-family townhomes known as Eula Cove Townhomes Phase 2.
Chair will entertain a motion.
This is Paul. Did Paul ask you anything about this, to talk to you?
He said he wasn't going to be here. He said carry on. That was his last words.
So he was all right with it? He wants to table it so he can deal with it himself?
He didn't voice any opposition, and I've had several conversations with him. Chair will entertain a motion.
I'd rather see him. do
Motion
it.
by Ms. Newman, I understand. Second by Mr. Guines. Ms. Newman? Mr. Guines?
You have no opposition. Good.
Anyone else? Jerry, you want to comment?
Okay, we've already approved Phase 1 of the Eula Street Townhomes, which you can see around in your packet. This is just for the creation. They acquired some more property. They want to build 12 more townhomes on this piece of property. It's a good request.
Yep. Okay, call for the question. All in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries. 6-0. Do I have a motion on consent?
I move it.
All right.
I'll second.
All right. Mr. Lawrence, and seconded by Mr. Guines. Mr. Lawrence?
A couple of things on F. Foxtrot, that Mr. Leonard. Oh, Foxtrot, that's what you said, you Marines. You got it? You awake over there?
What's your question?
What's the question? What are we actually doing here?
What are we doing here?
Change order for Nikkei.
Okay,
It's a
and what did they
Nikkei's change,
change
a
it?
small change order for Nikkei's. It's a small change order for Nikkei's.
And what is it? What did they change it?
Quantities or amounts or time?
Hand me F and I'll read it to him.
Foxtrot. Maybe due to the creosote, is that what it is?
Yeah, I'm thinking that's probably what it is.
Yeah, I think it's creosote. That's the creosote.
Extends them 11 days.
Yeah. Just days?
Just
Yeah.
days.
No money, just days.
Yeah, I didn't think he'd ask about it. so-
Must have rained that day. I don't want to talk about creosote.
An 11-day extension.
Say again?
Now, an 11-day extension. Now, it's not clear to me, but I think we've still got another delay coming. Have you seen them working down there on the creosote problem?
It's between on Howard Avenue, between Crawford Street and Rossetti. They ran into a problem that day. I think some extensive walking. Walt's not here, but there was some over the years. There's been some creosote built up, and we have to remove that. But we spent about 3 weeks or 4 weeks testing and defining where the problem is. The problem is actually under Howard Avenue, about 19 feet down, between Crawford and Rossetti Street. And that's caused a delay, and I think this is 11 day, will probably be an additional situation to remove and
That was because they just had to stop.
yeah, they had to stop. You know, it's like running into asbestos. We had to stop.
So it's all about the creosote and the water in the ground.
Huh?
Creosote itself is in the water and in the ground.
Not in the water. It was actually pulled up 19 feet down. When they started pulling stuff up, they noticed it and they defined it. We paid some engineering companies to test where it was, and they were worried or concerned about whether it was up Crawford Street and also Rose Street. It's not. It's all defined. You know it's low there anyhow. And that's, you know, it's how many years? 200 years of they used creosote to keep the dust down, but literally it's pulled up.
So we were kind of wound up in the lowest area.
Yeah. Deep. It's deep though.
Right, deep. All right, and this H, I don't quite understand what we're doing with H.
H is in Harvey.
Hotel.
It
It was
is.
a hotel.
Hotel.
Peter
Need
can,
more.
That's unique.
Peter
Hotel.
should probably
gonna-
take this one. This is the interlocal, Peter.
We're going to put a hotel at A.J. Holloway Sports Complex. We have an existing interlocal with the Biloxi School District who owns the land. They own the 68 acres where the ball fields, the soccer fields, the tennis courts, they own the land and we own the facilities. We own all the stuff on top. So we're in the process to be voted on in the future to upgrade all these fields. And the fields, the agreement right now has a one-year termination language. So before we were going to do any real upgrades to the fields, we need a long-term lease. So this is a 20-year lease for $1 a year for 68 acres with the school district, which they have already approved.
What are you talking about fields, all fields? That's their baseball field? That's all their fields? Or that's all in the complex that the city controls?
They own the land, they've always owned the land where all of that equipment is. The tennis courts, soccer fields, baseball field, softball field. They own the land. We built all the stuff on top, and there's been an interlocal agreement from 1986, or no, not that long, but
Yeah,
maybe that long?
98, I think.
That was all swamp in 86.
98.
And you approved the first one back in 92, I think, so, but, you know, it has a one-year termination time limit on it, so, you know, we're not gonna go do any long-term improvements unless we have a long-term lease.
I mean, I don't know.
You don't like that? Okay.
All
That's
right, whatever.
not a good deal.
I don't agree with that.
Okay.
Anyway, let's see, I think they have one more.
I think there were a couple of council members that weren't even born then, George.
Jay.
Jay?
Jay, yeah?
JJ?
Jay is in Juliet,
True? Yes.
my granddaughter, actually.
Yeah.
That is a resolution authorizing the mayor and the council to authorize the conditional award for the construction agreement for Capital Project 1024, which is the $6 million improvements to the Point Cadet Marina. The project was bid out. We've reviewed the bids. We've made our recommendation to MDEQ and to the U.S. Treasury Department. We're waiting for their approval to make the award. us approving a conditional award, which we will make the award once the U.S. Department of Treasury comes back with an okay.
So this is all about us getting money?
This is all of the improvements in the west end of the harbor mostly, for the most part, it's the area between Margaritaville and Golden Nugget. It's that part of the harbor. We've been talking about this for a couple of years now. We put it out to bid three months ago. Have open bids now. We're ready to make the award.
So I guess my question is, do we have the money or we just apply for the money?
We have the money.
You have the money?
$3 million of that is a grant from the Restore Act. The rest is cobbled together from various other sources.
Okay, thank you.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's the three I have.
All right, I'll come back to you if you need to. Mr. Guines?
I have none.
Mr. Barrett? I have nothing as well. So go ahead and call for the question. Motion to approve the consent agenda. All in favor? Those opposed? 4-0. Before we move on to code enforcement, I want to recognize one of our VIPs in the audience, Mr. Steve Delahousie. Been here since 5 o'clock, observing and taking notes and everything. Mr. Delahousie sits on our planning commission, one of our planning commissioners, and does a fine job there.
All righty.
Okay. Code enforcement? Go ahead and open the hearings.
Item A on the agenda, Allegiant Equities LLC, 2660 Beach Boulevard. This property is still in violation.
Okay, go get him. Go catch some bad guys.
Anyone here to speak on behalf of Allegiant Equities LLC? There being no one, this case is closed.
Item B, Joan Patricia L. Harry, 134 Lestrade Place. This property is still in violation.
Anyone here to speak on behalf of Joan Patricia L. Harry? There being no one, the case is closed.
Item C, Thomas D. Kohler, 234 Baker Street. Mr. Kohler has been working on this property. I told him I would ask the council for 30 days.
I'll move it.
All right. Motion to move for a 30-day extension. Do I have a second?
Say second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Lawrence. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion 30 days granted.
Item D, MJ Trust 2 LLC, 13301 Green Hill Circle. This property is still in violation.
Anyone here to speak on behalf of MJ Trust 12 LLC? There being none, this case is closed. Let's get that cleaned up.
Item E, Herman and Beulah L. Smith Estate, 262 Midway Street. This property is still in violation.
All right. Anyone to speak on behalf of Herman and Balash L. Smith Estate? There being no one, this, oh.
Yes.
You're here?
There's someone.
Come on up. If you would please state your name, address for the record. Speak on behalf of the property.
My name is Ethel Smith Curry, and I'm one of the siblings of Herman and Beulah Smith. I live at 262 Midway Street, and I've been there since '88. I took care of my dad before he passed away, and I've been the only one taking care of the taxes and the upkeep of the property and everything. And then I had a little brother that drifted in, and he's homeless, and he brings stuff, and he don't help keep the property clean. So I'm tired of being responsible for things that he brings there because it's expensive trying to get somebody to keep it cleaned.
How much time do you need to make some progress with this property?
Or can I get maybe another month?
Yeah.
She said what now?
She needs 30 days.
Okay, I'm gonna move 60 days, and then I'll do a follow-up with you, if that's okay. I'm gonna do 60 days and a follow-up.
All right, motion by Mr. Guines for 60 days. Mr. Deming, seconded.
Okay.
All right. Mr. Barrett wants it. Is that okay? All right, Mr. Barrett seconded it. You have 60 days, ma'am, to make some progress, okay?
All right, thank you so
thank
much.
you.
You're so welcome. All in favor of the
Yeah.
motion? All right, we approved it. Good.
Item F, State of Mississippi, 321 Benaki Avenue. This property is still in violation.
Ms. Newman, we needed some coffee tonight. Can you bring any for us? All right, anyone here to speak on the behalf of the state of Mississippi on this project, on this case? There being no one, this case is closed, and that closes our hearings. Motion for the routine agenda. All right. Mr. Lawrence, seconded by Mr. Guines. Mr. Lawrence?
540,000, I believe, was the last receipt, and it's someone to play about 1.2 million in the mid, in phase 2 or 3, something like that.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Guines, you got anything? Anybody else?
Good.
All in favor of the routine agenda? All opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Guines, you want to recess us?
Yes, I want to recess in memory of Chief Master Sergeant Chris Moore.
We all second that.
And we all second.
All right.
Amen.
Seconded by Mr. Lawrence and everyone. All in favor? Those opposed? We stand in recess.
Was that guy supposed to say the thing about Mr. Narver deal? I don't think he was supposed to say that out loud, was he?
No, yeah, he was. Oh, you jumped over.
He said the piece of property.
Yeah. That was one of the reasons why I moved forward.